kids, welcome back to our weekly Kids for Truth video, where as you know, we're exploring some of the big truths about God. Hey, did you notice my name tag? My name's not really funny, but I asked my kids what one word they would use to describe me, and this is what they all said first. And I will admit, I try to keep my kids laughing. So today, hello, my name is Funny. If you were to wear a name tag that described what you're like, what would it be? Would your name tag maybe say smart? Or maybe generous? Or thoughtful? Maybe you would be known as kind, or athletic, or artistic, right? Sometimes a person's characteristics are so obvious. What they're like is so obvious, they are known by that name. Maybe you know the story of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Well, in that story, the dwarves are named for their characteristics. So we have Sneezy and Dopey and Doc and Bashful and Happy and Sleepy and Grumpy, right? Their characteristics become their name. Well, did you know that if God wore a name tag, his might say merciful, right? God is known for his mercy. And mercy means holding back judgment that's deserved. So even though people deserve God's judgment, instead he offers forgiveness. That's what it means to be merciful. It's one of his most obvious character traits. And as we find in the Bible, again and again, God is known for his mercy. We see in the Old Testament that God is known for his mercy. God shows mercy to his people. So for instance, the people of Judah, one of the tribes of God's chosen people, they were rebellious against God, but instead of destroying them, giving them what they deserve, he offered them forgiveness. He did correct them, he did discipline them, but he did not destroy them. In fact, the prophet Jeremiah said it was only because God's never-ending mercy that God did not destroy Judah. And in some of the most beautiful words in all the Old Testament, Jeremiah says in Lamentations 3, verse 22, "The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases." It never ends. His mercy never comes to an end. So God had made promises to his people long ago. And even despite their rebellion, despite their disobedience, God kept his word. God offered forgiveness. He showed mercy instead of destroying them. God has always showed his people mercy. But nowhere do we see God's mercy like the mercy he showed us on the cross. If we want to see what God's mercy looks like, all we have to do is look at the cross. Because God showed incredible mercy by giving his son Jesus to take the punishment for our sins. God did not give us what we deserved, but Jesus took upon himself our punishment. And the cross was horribly painful. It was terrible. It was the worst punishment that the Romans used against the worst criminals. But as terrible as the punishment was, it was all God's plan to show us just how great his mercy and his forgiveness really is. And what we see is that Jesus, the Son, showed us his mercy on the cross. If we want to see just how merciful and forgiving Jesus is, all we have to do is look at Jesus on the cross. And on the cross, despite his terrible, unjust suffering, Jesus showed mercy. Now, when we think about that unjust suffering, all we have to do is look at the gospel accounts. The writers of the New Testament, they tell us just how awful his undeserved punishment was, just how terrible the cross was. We're told in John chapter 19, verse 1 through 3, that Pilate took Jesus and he flogged him, or he beat him. And the soldiers twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on his head and arrayed him in a purple robe. And they came up to him saying, "Hail, King of the Jews," and they struck him with their hands. So they beat him, They placed a crown of thorns on him. They spit on him. They poked fun at him. Mark 15 tells us this, that eventually they crucified him and they divided his garments or his robe, and they cast lots for them to decide what each should take. And it was at the third hour when they crucified him, and the inscription of the charge against him read, "The King of the Jews." And with him they crucified 2 robbers, one on his right and one on his left. So they took his clothes. They stole what was his, and they crucified him. They nailed him to a tree between 2 criminals, as if Jesus himself was a terrible criminal. But in spite of all that, what do you think Jesus did? What was his response to such suffering, unjust suffering? Did he destroy them? No. Instead, he asked the Father to forgive them. In Luke 23, verse 34, Jesus said from the cross, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do." And they took and cast lots to divide his garments. So right in the middle of all his suffering, Jesus looks down from the cross and he says, "Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing." Mercy flows from God through Jesus, and Jesus, even on the cross, extends mercy to his enemies. Do you know God still offers mercy and forgiveness through Jesus? Ephesians 2, verses 4 and 5 says that God is rich in mercy. He doesn't run out of mercy because of the great love with which he loves us. Even when we were dead in our trespasses or sins, he made us alive together with Christ. By grace, you have been saved. God still shows people like you and me mercy. Anybody who comes to him and says, "God, don't give me what I deserve. My sins deserve your punishment and your anger. God, don't give me what I deserve. Give me grace and forgiveness through Jesus." Have you experienced that mercy? I invite you to. God is merciful. That is who he is. That is what he offers to us. Well, thanks again for joining us for this Kids Minute. Hope you have a great week. We'll see you next time.